Bonjour à tous et bienvenue dans ce nouvel épisode du Digital Download. Oops. Good morning, good afternoon, and good day wherever you may be joining us from. And welcome to a new edition of the Digital Download, the longest running weekly business talk show on LinkedIn Live. Now globally syndicated on TuneIn Radio through IBGR, the world #1 business talk, news, and strategy radio network. Today, we're diving into key approaches to successful social selling in B2B. We have a special guest, Alex Abbott, to help us with the discussion. Alex is a seasoned sales professional and social selling specialist. With over 30 years of experience, Alex has honed his skills in leveraging social media to build relationships, establish trust, and drive business growth. He's the architect of the Conversation Operating System, a method designed to tackle pipeline challenges in the B2B landscape. But before we bring Alex on, let's go around the set and introduce everyone. While we're doing that, why don't you in the audience reach out to a friend, ping them, and have them join us. We strive to make the digital download an interactive experience. Audience participation is highly encouraged. So, Tim, why don't you kick us off?
Thank you. Welcome, everybody, to the Digital Download, our Friday extravaganza. And my name is Tim Hughes. I'm the CEO and co-founder of DLA Ignite, and I'm famous for writing the book, Social Selling Techniques to Influence Buyers and Changemakers.
Adam.
Hi, everybody. I'm Adam Gray. I'm Tim's business partner, also co-founder of DLA Ignite. And I'm very much looking forward to the conversation that we're going to be having today, because one of the key things is that there seems to be in the marketplace a huge amount of mystique around social. Well, I'll create a post, it'll go viral and everything will be all right. And actually, what we all know from having been implementing and practitioners of this for some time is that the way you get success is graft. You do things, you refine those things, you measure those things, and you keep a note of what's working and what isn't. So hearing Alex talk about this will be really exciting.
And clearly, we're anxious to hear about this. Myself, Bertrand Godillot, I am the founder and managing partner of Odysseus & Co., a very proud DLA Ignite partner. So as I said, this week on the Digital Download, we'll speak with Alex Abbott. Alex's insight stem from his extensive experience in various leadership roles, including head of marketing cloud at Oracle Customer Experience and sales director at Responsys. He is also a co-founder of Critical Convo and SalesTV.live, platforms dedicated to empowering sales professionals with modern selling techniques. Let's bring him on. Hi, Alex.
Welcome, Alex.
Welcome.
Hello. It's great to be here. It's been a while since I've been on the download. I've thoroughly enjoyed my time as a kind of a co-presenter, panelist. So it feels weird being on the other side as a guest.
It does for me as well, Alex, indeed. Alex, let's start by having you tell us a little bit more about you, your background, and how and what led you to where you are today.
Yeah, so for those that don't know me, I left school at 16. I was a car mechanic, an apprentice car mechanic when I left school. Didn't really know what I wanted to do, but a mate of mine was an apprentice carpenter and he had a really nice car, Ford Fiesta XR2. And I thought I wanted a nice car, so I wanted to earn some money. So decided to become an apprentice as an apprentice car mechanic. Anyway, sort of 3 years had gone by and I realized I wanted to do something different. I wanted to earn some money. And following my dad's footsteps as a businessman, but I had no sales experience. So I applied for a job as a Kirby vacuum cleaner salesperson. That was my first experience of sales. Took me 7 years to eventually break into business to business sales. And then it took me another 6 years to actually learn how to sell software and services properly. And then kind of fast forward, I've had a sort of a 25-year career in B2B sales. Left the corporate world in 2020 and set up Sapiro providing sales as a service, initially to tech companies, working with my two eldest sons, Jordan and Jensen. And after that first year, I realized, a lot had changed in the world of B2B sales. And we were in this inflection point where buyer behavior had changed so much. I mean, it had been changing for years, but it had reached that point kind of post-COVID where it didn't matter what we did as salespeople. It was very difficult to generate conversations and pipeline and impact revenue. And so that's when I met or re-met Adam and Tim, and decided to pivot the business from providing sales as a service to becoming a training business and providing social selling, training and coaching. I've been on a 4-year journey, almost 4-year journey, really becoming an expert at social selling and looking at how I can optimize the approach, change the approach so that, those companies, people within those companies that are trying to do social selling can actually do it effectively and also understand how to operationalize social selling so they can start to create conversations at scale. That kind of brings us to where we are today.
Quite a journey, indeed.
Right. Yeah.
Alex, let's start with a foundational question. How can organizations make sure their social selling strategy works?
So there were a couple of things that I found that companies were missing a trick with when they were looking at upskilling their teams to do social selling. One was they were measuring the wrong stuff. So they would give their teams some training and then expect their teams to perform with these new skills. And the reality was they were still measuring traditional approaches like how many emails they were sending, how many calls they were making, and they weren't measuring the things that really matter when it comes to social selling. Things like network growth, follower growth, things like the number of posts, the frequency in which you're posting, but more importantly, the percentage of those posts that are humanized posts, that are more personal, perhaps more aligned to the individual's core values and beliefs. Other things like commenting. And so this notion of inserting yourself into social networking conversations and the quality of those comments, encouraging debate, encouraging conversation. After all, that's what salespeople love to do. They love to talk to their prospects. So why not do that on social media? And when those things aren't being measured, they don't drive the right behaviors from the salespeople that are, have learned these new skills. And then you have this sort of, this battle internally between the business, the organization, the sales ops team, measuring different things. The other thing was that I saw that was missing was the support needed to change, that personal change. And so, change is hard at the best of times for any individual or any organization, but when it means putting yourself out there on social media, it's incredibly difficult. It's often scary for many people to put themselves out there. And so, looking at providing, coaching, support to help that individual really understand, the emotions that they're going through when they're being asked to do something they feel incredibly uncomfortable about, and then helping them see a way forward. Yeah.
So that's pretty interesting, because when we talk about with other people and salespeople about social selling. It's often down to sending messages, sending email messages, using LinkedIn's Sales Navigator, for instance. From what you just said, I am under the impression that what you're talking about is radically different. Is it?
Yeah, very different. The best way, I think, to kind of picture it is, I think about, really four things when it comes to social selling. The first is personal brand. And actually, you could think about these four things as levers that, salespeople can kind of visualize pulling those levers. And when they pull those levers, it increases the probability of them being more successful with social selling. And so that first lever is really personal brand. And within personal brand, there's kind of two sides of that coin. One is your static, social presence, the passive social presence that you might have. And that could be, if we look at LinkedIn, a whole host of things on your LinkedIn profile that if you change them, like your about section. So if you go and look at my about section, I tell a story about me, the longer version that I told you at the beginning of this show. But it's something that's static. It stays on the profile. And there's about 30 odd things that you can change, that you can align to your personal brand, the things that you want to be known for. The other side of that is the dynamic things, so the things that, the way you behave, the things that you do, the conversations that you insert yourself into. And so those other three levers for me are really, engagement. So that's really about growing your network, curating your network. It's, it's commenting, it's inserting yourself into conversations regularly and doing it on a daily basis in front of the people that you want to do business with. That next lever is content. It's the creation of content, but it's also the variety of that content, so that you're always bringing something new to the table. Video, articles, blog posts, photos of yourself, humanized content. And then the final lever is really influence. And if you're focusing on the first three levers, and then the quality and the depth and how much you can pull those levers, the more influence that you'll create within the network among the people that you really want to do business with.
All right. So how do you measure that influence, basically? Because I think you've got quite a, some experience and some time measuring some of your results. So I'd like to be I'm quite interested, and I think the audience would be quite interested into understanding what are the actual KPIs that you're looking after, and what are the results that you see.
Yeah, so it really starts with measuring as much as you can. So there's measures that sort of help hold you accountable for doing the activities. And then there are measures that will help you direct that focus into the places that you want to have the most influence. So on a weekly basis, I'm tracking network growth, follower growth, the number of comments, the number of posts, the percentage of those posts that are humanized posts, because that's really what penetrates that zone of resistance, that helps you be seen by those people. It's the number of conversations that I'm generating, or that we're generating off the back of that activity. It's the percentage of those conversations that are progressing to a meaningful next step, which is really important, because it's one thing getting the conversation with, with the people that you want to do business with. But when you've done your, when your social selling strategy is kind of working for you, then it's more obvious, kind of who you are, what you do, that you're genuine and authentic, you're worth having a conversation with. So when you have that conversation is more likely to progress, with a meaningful next step. Agreed. And, part of that conversation comes down to the quality and what you say on that call. But for me, I think that's still all part of social selling. Storytelling for me is a big part of social selling, and being able to then continue that story in person or on a call is really important, I think, to aligning, building rapport and aligning on value. And then, depending on, who you're targeting, what your ideal customer profile is, which persona, then I think it's important to measure the impact that you're having within those accounts that you want to do business with. How well connected are you within those accounts? The number of people that I talk to that, I ask the question, so, tell me what are your top 5 accounts that you're working on? How many connections do you have in those accounts? Oh, well, I've got 2 or 3. Well, you're practically invisible. So don't expect to be doing business with those companies anytime soon.
So one of the things that you've been doing, Alex, is that you created a benchmark, haven't you?
Yeah.
So for 2 years now, you've actually so those measures that you talked about, you've actually been measuring those things across a whole bunch of people.
Yeah.
And you've enabled you. So one of the criticisms or one of the objections that we quite often get is that social selling is just messing about on social media.
Mm.
And what is the basis that you're building up to ultimately get revenue? So tell us about your benchmark.
Yeah, well, it first started 2 years ago, when myself, Jordan and Jensen were measuring everything that we were doing on a weekly basis. And then that grew to clients and associates, those that were willing basically to contribute to that benchmark study. We've done other kind of pilot studies with a client, with the Institute of Sales Professionals, together with the client. And really, we've been trying to understand what you need to do in order to achieve commercial objectives that really start with a conversation. But more importantly, how can we then start to predict performance through a prescribed set of social selling behaviors? And that really helped me develop what I just described a moment ago, those 4 levers. That what I described a moment ago is the superior social selling value framework. It's really the ability to provide guidance to salespeople so that they can follow some sort of path to value. The benchmark also really helped when it came to understanding the level of maturity of people doing social selling. And we clearly understood kind of the best practice and what social selling mastery was or is. But to expect anyone else to reach social selling mastery is, well, I think foolish. I wasted a lot of time telling people what they should be doing, but most people can't actually get there. They can't actually do it. And so the benchmark study helped us develop a social selling maturity assessment to really understand, where people are today, so that then I could provide, more tailored training, more tailored recommendations to help each person kind of improve through the levels. I don't know if that answered your question, Tim, but there's lots of things that are kind of spinning off the benchmark study as a result, which
well, it's more about what I was trying to get to was it's that, you know, if as a sales leader looking in, you go social selling, okay, yeah, whatever. But what that is people basically playing around on social media. I don't want people to do that. What I want is people to get on the phones and actually sell something. You know, there's someone put out a blog just in the last couple of days saying why the silent sales floor was killing sales, because the view is that people are just messing about on social and actually doing nothing. Whereas what you seem to be saying to me is not only do you seem to have some sort of process that people walk through, but you're measuring it as well, so much so that you know that when you move these levers, you're going to get some level of result.
Yeah, and it's you know, I think it's important to be really clear to our audience that so I can tell you some of the numbers from the benchmark.
Yeah, I think it'd be useful.
But I think it's really important to kind of preface that with the fact that you know, there are different types of organizations out there selling to different types of people and different types of organizations. So, you know, I often made the mistake of talking quite excitedly about the fact that social selling, you can get a 10% conversation rate, blows cold calling out of the water. You know, you can get a 39% call progression rate, because these are the average statistics. And did you know that you can engage with 6.4 times more stakeholders than you can, or that we've seen companies engage with using traditional methods? And that by using social selling, you're more likely to engage the C-suite earlier. And when you engage the C-suite earlier within the sales process, you increase sales velocity by 9.2 times. I mean, these numbers are just insane. I mean, there's no denying that social selling works.
So go through them again, because you went through them really quickly, Alex.
I'm going to go through them again, but I kind of did that on purpose because I want to then come back to, if you're a BDR, those numbers might excite you. If you're an AE, engaging with 6.4 times more stakeholders should excite you, because the more stakeholders you can engage with, the more likely you are to be able to tailor your value proposition to them and improve close rates, reduce sales cycles, and increase average order value. But then, you know, if we look at professional services, for example, and the research, the new research that Matt Dixon's about to launch, where he's found that professional services organizations 5 years ago were in quite a luxurious position, because 76% of businesses were coming back to them. They were loyal to them to buy more services from them. You know, and they're the companies that have the relationships with the tech companies, so the tech companies stay close to them because they're going to sell more tech. Now, you know, if we look at 12 to 18 months ago, that 76% had dropped to somewhere around 50%, and it's projected to get to 30-something% in the next 5 years. So loyalty is diminishing. Yet you've got many consultants within these professional services businesses that are doing the selling. They're doing the selling, they're doing the delivery. You know, they're seen as the trusted advisors. And many times I've had professional services companies tell me, well, you know, our consultants can't do social selling. They're way too busy. Well, these guys need to wake up pretty soon, because they need to be developing their personal brand. They need to be inserting themselves into conversations on social media so that they can actually deepen the relationships they've got and strengthen those, so that they, you know, can tackle this downward spiral of diminishing, you know, loyalty and trust.
But do these people think that this behavior is, I guess, for want of a better term, do they feel that this is beneath them? You know, I've been a delivery expert in my field, and I'm an acknowledged expert, and I've been doing this for 25 years. I don't need to do this stuff. And
Yeah.
is that a barrier?
Maybe, or maybe they just don't know. They think it's oh, it's dirty, it's prospecting. And there's this confusion between social selling and business development, I think.
But isn't this just about the frog in the saucepan? Which is the frog in the saucepan, which is when you put the frog in a saucepan, and you turn up the heat, it doesn't actually feel the relatively difference in the temperature of the water. And so what you can do is you can boil a frog in the saucepan, because as you turn it up, it basically gradually boils, because, as I say, it doesn't feel the difference. If you take a saucepan of boiling water and you put a frog in it, it jumps out because it feels because it feels the temperature of the water. So what happens is that we have this bias, which is that we don't see the relative change of pace of whatever it is that's going on around us.
Yeah.
So even though you can come up with those figures, they go, that's but we're different.
Yeah.
We're still able to do that. We're still able to it's all still about the golf course. Yeah. Which Adam and I were told by a professional services organization that we didn't know anything. We didn't understand business. It was, look, you guys, you don't really understand business. They said to us. So what happens is we go out to the golf course with the CEO and he signs the deal. He signs the deal. That's what they said. and that's it. So we don't need your social selling rubbish.
Yeah, it's a great analogy. Yeah.
So I understand those figures. But that relatively changed, because we don't. It's this thing that we because of the bias we don't see that change.
Yeah, the book is that Matt Dixon's launching this year is the Activator Advantage, and the research has found that those consultants that are most successful in professional services are the ones that. There were 3 traits. I think one of them was business development, consistent with their business development and relationship building. So, the difference today is, you can't rely on doing that in the old ways. There's not enough networking opportunities per se.
So going back to your data.
Yeah.
And working through those figures again, which you won't scoot. So you said that based on your data, what was the first one? That the was it 10 meetings or something?
So the first one is, we call it the conversation rate, the call rate. So the percentage of calls that you book and complete with.
And when you say a call, this isn't just DMing people on social. This is about having an actual call with somebody where you speak to them.
You actually speak to them. Yeah.
Okay. Right.
Yeah. So the average over, 2 years amongst a range of seniority and maturity experiences is 10%.
So 10% of the people that you ask for a call say yes.
Exactly. Not just say yes, but you actually complete the call. You have the call.
That's staggering, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because if you take cold calling, generally that has a 99% failure rate.
Yeah, indeed. And it's there's some things to bear in mind in terms of how quickly you can get there. But a salesperson with a couple of years experience can get to kind of around the 4% mark relatively quickly, and then grow from there. So we definitely see. We definitely see experience and seniority having an impact, ranging from somewhere between 4 and 13.5% conversation rate.
So the average SDR with a good SDR can go from a 1% core rate to a 4% core rate in weeks, months.
Absolutely. But yeah. The other thing to bear in mind is depending on the focus. So, I've worked with one guy in the US, I think him, Tech Lubiertz. he worked with his SDR directly in partnership, working a set of 50 accounts. In 5 months, they generated 1 meeting from those accounts.
Using traditional legacy sales methods, yeah.
Exactly, cold calling and emailing. Within the first 4 weeks of deploying social selling, they had 2 meetings. And after 5 months, like almost a mirror image period, I think it was 36 meetings in 16 of those accounts. They were averaging sort of 2.4 meetings per account. And he was engaging with 6 times the number of stakeholders.
Hold on. So it took him 5 months to get 1 meeting. It took the next 5 months to get 36 meetings, doing it your way.
Yeah.
So 36 times the success.
Yeah. Exactly.
So to any sales leaders watching this show, what would 36 times, if nothing else gets better, if the salespeople don't get better at managing the meetings, closing the business, pitching stuff, if everything else remains constant, this delivers 36 times as much business.
Yeah. And not everybody performs at that level, but yes, that is.
Oh, some people have performed better.
But you said that, yes, some people perform better. Because we talked earlier on about an SDR with a couple of years' work could get 4% response, but you said the average was 10%.
Yeah.
So there's some people are getting more than 10 meetings a week.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, to break it down, Alex, 2 meetings a day for an average SDR to get 2 meetings a day with their ICP, that's out of this world.
Yeah.
It's unbelievable.
Yeah.
Which is kind of why I wanted to invite you on here, because I wanted to hear it from you. So, and this is true.
Yeah. 100%. Yeah. And those that can't or don't achieve these sorts of numbers are quite simply the ones that aren't following the prescription.
And you said that you did some work with the ISP. So I mean, it's you've got this isn't Alex in his bedroom making stuff up.
Yeah.
This is where you've actually got an outside organization to actually I'm trying to think of the correct terminology. I'm not in academia, so
validate. Yeah.
So it's having that outside view of the data. So anyway, so let's go through this. So an SDR, an average SDR, and all sales leaders will tell you that none of my sales SDRs are average; they're all higher than average. But the average SDR can get 10 meetings. Okay, so what are they doing with those meetings? How are they converting them?
Yeah. So you say 10 meetings. So this is ongoing. This is 10% of those that they ask. And so, when they're developing, their personal brand, when they're working on, understanding, identifying what they want to be known for, and it's clear to their audience that they are a trusted advisor in their space. Not only that they're genuine and authentic people worth having a conversation with, and they're engaging in a credible way. So the biggest difference, really, if we simplify it, it's instead of sending insight-based sales messages all of the time that are ignored, when your recipient doesn't know you, like you, or trust you, you're really spending the time to build that affinity, build that rapport, developing your personal brand, inserting yourself into conversations that, show you as a credible individual, a trusted advisor. When you reach out to these people, they're more likely to have a conversation with you. Or when the time's right, they reach out to you. So we've not talked about inbound yet, but it creates a sense of inbound as well. So, looking at your territory as a whole and all of the stakeholders that you want to engage with across that territory, when you're deploying this strategy and reaching out in a relationship first approach, that's when 10%, that's when we're seeing 10% of everybody you ask actually have a call with you. And 39% of those calls progress to a meaningful next step. And that, that varies greatly depending on the value proposition, how well they're trained. For example, Jordan, who you know very well, his call progression rate is 22%, I think, from memory. And but what's important to know is his pipeline qualification rate or deal qualification rate from those calls that have progressed is 52%.
That's fantastic.
Very impressive.
And I do remember Jordan basically saying once, I've got so many meetings, I don't know what to do.
Yeah, he was hitting.
I mean, how many SDRs say that? 0.
Yeah.
So in terms of the when you say the call progression, so that's about you say 10. So in fact you're going to ask more people than 10%, but 10% actually have a call. And I'm going to ask you again. This is a conversation, isn't it? It's a call, like a Zoom call,
like this.
Yeah, or a telephone conversation. And then of those, in terms of the progression, 39% then basically go on, and you've got some sort of next action. So in effect, you're moving them on in terms of the sales process.
Yeah.
There's something also that maybe is worth mentioning, or at least asking. We talk a lot about calls, but how long are these calls?
Well, typically 30 minutes, because it's quite often the initial call is a rapport building call, and so you're kind of ideally you're swapping personal stories, and so a big part of my program is about storytelling and teaching people how to tell, how to design initially different stories depending on where they are in the sales process. So I often ask people, if you had an opportunity to tell a success story versus your personal story when you've met someone for the first time, more than 70% of the time people say, well, a success story. I need to tell them how great we are. And usually it's a success story about how great they are, as opposed to how great they've helped, how well they've helped a client become successful. And actually that's the first mistake, because nobody, especially if you've met them for the first time, they're likely to be very skeptical of who you are because you're a salesperson. And if you start telling a success story straight out of the gate, they don't believe you, period. So it's really important to tell your personal story and swap personal stories first, because then you create a bond. And you may even not get to the success story on that initial call because you're just trying to build a rapport. And that often takes 30 minutes, 10 to 15 minutes each way. You've built rapport, and then before the end of the call, you're saying, well, or even they've asked the question, when you told them what you do, well, actually, I'd like to learn more about that. That's interesting.
I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Bertrand, but what we've seen is this thing where 5 years ago, people were basically going and asking for demos, and they said, give me 30 minutes of your time. And then what happened is that 3 years ago, they started saying, give me 20 minutes of your time. And currently, what we understand the thing is that people are saying, give me 3 minutes of your time. And basically what they're asking for is 3 minutes of time to pitch. Whereas what you're saying is that give me 30 minutes of your time, and what we're going to do is that we're going to build trust and a relationship.
Mm.
Can I pick up on LinkedIn users' question?
Oh, sorry, I've got a question from the chat, and then
Yeah, yes.
maybe. Right. When you say a 10% call agree rate, is this from the first message sent being a call request?
Yeah, we never request a call from the first message. The first message is really the connection. If you're not connected, it's the connection request, and there's no ask there. Yeah,
Clear.
this is, if we simplify it, it's the third message. But there's a lot more that goes into it other than just the direct message.
Of course.
That's just, a very small part of the overall picture.
But Alex, so the way you've described this is incredibly compelling, and the way you've described about getting on a call and having a chat to someone and getting to know them and swapping stories is like, I'm going to invite you to the football match, and we'll spend the day chilling out and having a few beers and watching the match. And salespeople know all of this stuff already.
Yeah,
but they're simply not doing it, are they? They're somehow thinking that the answer is, with no context whatsoever, they're reaching out to somebody who doesn't know them from Adam, and they're sending them an email which basically lists the products and services. We're top quartile for this. We're really good. We can offer you the following services. And not surprisingly, those go into the bin. So how do you break that cycle? Because clearly the good thing about sending one of those emails is that it plays to the salesperson's belief that you've got to get your no quickly. That's where success lies. You've got to say, no, I don't want this. And sure enough, sending emails to people is a way of getting a no quickly from everybody, sadly.
yeah.
So, and the nice thing about that is that I can take exactly the same message and I can just hose down the mountainside of LinkedIn with these messages going out to a bunch of people that look like they're kind of in my ICP. So how do you break that cycle? How do you get people to say, or how do you convince people that what they need to do is just relax? It's about getting to know people first.
Yeah. It's difficult. It really is difficult, and some are more up for it than others. It really depends on, how much pain they felt, where they are. Are they at the end of their tether? The other variable that's really important here is the organization and what does the leadership think? For the leadership team giving the support in order to make the transformation needed in order to sustainably follow this new approach.
Because one of the things about sales is we want instant gratification, isn't it?
Yeah.
So the request, that LinkedIn user, when you say, sorry, LinkedIn user, I'm just using you as a metaphor for anybody in sales. Basically, what we're going to do is we're going to go to everybody and we're going to ask you for a dance. And because sales is a numbers game, and we go and ask it. If we keep asking and asking and asking, someone will say yes.
Yeah.
And we feel at that point that what we're getting is an element of speed and velocity.
But we're not.
Because the objection to what you're saying is that people will say, this will take too long. I don't have time for this.
Yeah.
So how do you get around that?
It's ironic because the more you do, the more you do the old way, I'm going to ask as many people to dance as possible. Yeah, you might get a few dances and hopefully they're good quality dances. But actually, wouldn't it be better to take the time to build relationships with more people in the dance hall so that you can then pick and choose whoever you want to dance with, and they're more likely to dance with you because they know you. They know you're a good dancer, to continue your analogy.
Yeah.
So let's maybe step back a little bit and say, okay, so we have a current practice And I love, by the way, the fact that you've got for those listening to you on radio, Alex's background is a green on a golf course. And I'd like to talk a little bit about changing your swing, because this is what we're talking about here. So you've got a traditional way of prospecting, which we all know is not well, and we tend to agree that this is not satisfactory, but at least it's better than nothing.
Yeah.
What it produced, the outcome is better than nothing. What we're saying is that there is a completely different way of doing things, which is much more successful. So in other words, there is a new swing that you could learn that would help you have a better game.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, when you start learning that new swing, it can get worse actually than before it gets better.
Yeah.
So how do you drive someone who's really an organization and obviously a management team that is really willing to make that move and help them get there?
But the better swing will get you down from a handicap of 25 down to single.
All the time, clearly.
Well, I don't think this is about a better swing, though, is it? Because I think that traditional sales is like trying to score a hole in one. So I'm going to phone people, and very rarely, every now and again, someone will answer the phone and say, yes, I'll buy from you. And the problem with that is that it relies almost exclusively on luck. I'll hit the ball as hard as I can, and hopefully it will go in the hole. And actually what you're doing is you're teaching people to drive, to chip, and to putt. And you know that if the best golfers in the world are not necessarily the golfers that hit the most holes in one, they're the golfers that understand how to drive and pitch and putt.
Yeah. And the support, I mean, I can't tell you how important it is that you've got that support. The people doing the work have that support. So, the greens are kept well, the clubs are clean, the caddy knows what he's talking about or she's talking about. If we again carry on that golf analogy, but it really is it's what I've realized actually quite relatively recently as I've sort of developed the conversation operating system. I purposefully call it that because it really is important for organizations who want to adopt this approach so that it sticks and they can raise the bar across the organization. They really need to be changing what they're measuring, looking at what systems they're using, what processes they're following, even down to remuneration. How are you remunerating your people? Are you, remunerating them based on, revenue numbers that don't really look at driving the right behaviors and holding people and leadership accountable for doing this? Because if you do all of that, this could be incredible for organizations. When you think about the importance of that conversation, and the one thing that most organizations are struggling with are getting those conversations with their audience so that they can influence them. They can actually talk to them about the value that they will bring.
So what I'm hearing, Alex, is because the classic example of this, the response to this is when we have bad pipeline, what we do is that we go out and we train people on Medic or Challenger or whatever the latest sales methodology is. Because what we do is that we talk to people how to close. But what I'm hearing from you is actually what we need to be doing is teaching people how to actually start conversations.
Yeah. Start the conversation, yes. But Medic and Challenger, as you say, Tim, it's all about improving the performance once you've had the conversation, once you have a qualified opportunity. Okay, yeah, some of them sort of, start with, creating insight to educate and generate pipeline. But as we know, buyers are ignoring that insight because it's everywhere and it's being thrown at them left, right, and center. So unless there is a degree of trust then they'll ignore your insight. So what we're talking about here is developing trust, developing rapport and trust prior to the opportunity being generated. So you increase your chances of speaking with that person, but then you're seen as a trusted advisor continuously throughout the process. So you're more likely to be more visible. You're less likely to be ghosted. You're more likely to engage with other stakeholders influencing the purchase decision. Therefore, you're more likely to increase the chances of winning the business, reducing the sales cycle, and also impacting the average order value. So,
all right, excellent. Well, I'm all in. Alex, this has been really great. Where can we learn more? How can people get in touch with you?
LinkedIn is the best place to get in touch with me.
I bet.
Yeah. Link, full stop, LinkedIn. Search for Alex Abbott or the Bearded Sales Guy.
Okay, excellent. Well, thanks for that. So we now have a newsletter. Don't miss an episode. Get the show highlights, beyond the show insights, and reminders of upcoming episodes. You can scan the QR code on screen or visit us at digitaldownload.live/newsletter. On behalf of the panelists, to our guest Alex, and to our audience, thank you all and see you next time.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Thanks, Alex.
Bye.